Hello everyone! The story of Pandaria begins far before the mist parted and we set foot on land. In the far distant past, we have the Titans, who did battle with the old gods and their so-called Black Empire, bringing order to the world and saving the world's soul inside from the void's corruption. Or so we've been told. Mid-combat, the Titan Amantul ripped out the old god Yogg-saron, and as he did, bits and pieces of the old god's corpse fell back to the surface below, brought havoc wherever they landed. The most powerful of these pieces, like Yogg-saron's heart, they were gathered and buried deep underground, but other fragments incorporated themselves into features of the planet itself. Over centuries, new civilizations formed atop one of these pieces. It would later be known as Pandaria.
Oh, Pandaria!
A land formed on top of the old god's bits is destined for darkness, and Keeper Ra, locking Yogg-saron's heart underground, didn't help much either. They were planning to study it and understand more of the nature of the old gods and other void creatures. But we've seen how experiments like that can end up accidentally creating more of the old gods. Thankfully, that didn't happen here, but things still didn't exactly go great. Sargeras would end up fighting his fellow titans, strike them down, but only their physical form. Their souls raised back to Azeroth into their keepers, which caused them a whole bunch of confusion. Confusion, which the old god Yogg-saron, locked up over at Ulduar, made full use of. Keeper Ra also felt the effects, but he gave it another glance or two and figured out that their creators, their gods, were dead. He went into a depressed, self-imposed exile, leaving his beloved Mogu to take care of business.
Fathers and sons, mothers and daughters. As parents, we pass our legacy on to our children. What values do we choose to instill in our progeny? What will our children learn from our mistakes? What sort of world will we create and leave behind for our daughters and sons? Parents place their children on a path, but they do not always know where the road will take them. The Mogu were children as well, children of the Titans. They were once a legion of stone, heartless and obedient. By the Titans' command, they fought the terrible servants of the old gods. They shaped the mountains and carved the rivers of the land. And they created a magical cradle of life in a hidden valley that we now call the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. But eventually, the Titans fell silent, and their creations were cursed with flesh. The Mogu grew restless. Many generations later, when the Thunder King united them, they seized upon their legacy. I truly believe now that the Mogu thought they were doing the work of the Titans. They fought against the Mantid and used the powers of the Veil to create new life. Oh, but such terrible works. Parents cannot always be assured of the legacy they will leave behind. How especially true this is when the parents are gods and the children monsters.
Yogg-saron, messing around in Ulduar, would give birth to the Curse of Flesh, which was designed to weaken the Titan Forged, make them more vulnerable to the old god's corruption, and literally give them flesh. A curse that reached the Mogu, and a great age of strife followed. But one of them, Lei Shen, he could not believe this was all that there was to their lives. Surely their people deserved better, had a higher purpose than constantly backstabbing each other, murdering out other tribes. So he set out to find Creator Ra, expecting the Keeper to have some sort of plan, to offer some answers, but all he found was a Keeper that had given up. No matter. If Raden wasn't gonna do it, then Lei Shen would continue the Titan's mission, or the way that he envisioned it to be. With stolen powers and Raden locked away, he enslaved the mortal races of Pandaria, like the Pandaren, the Jinyu, and the Hosen, and when existing slaves perished or proved inefficient, he would shape new ones, like the Grummels or the Saurak.
His followers fell to their knees before him. "We will call you the Lightning King," they said. But Lei Shen did not agree. "Lightning strikes in an instant and is over in a flash," he said. "But thunder proclaims the coming of the storm. Thunder quakes the skies long before the lightning strikes, and thunder echoes in the hills long after lightning's power is spent. It is thunder that sends animals cowering and fills the hearts of peasants with dread. Let thunder be my herald, so that my power is felt throughout the land. I will be the Thunder King." Oh, my friend, that awful sound. For 100 generations, the crash of thunder filled the hearts of Pandaren with terror.
Under his ruthless thumb, they were forced to build him an empire and a great serpent wall to keep those pesky Mentit out of their veil. The Mentits are an evolution of the Akir, in this case evolved under the influence of Yogg-saron, whose essence is infused into the land. The Mentits didn't consciously know this, but they were drawn to the veil because of the heart of their old god that was locked underneath. Every 100 years, the swarm would fly out, strike, and whoever managed to survive would return that much stronger. Each cycle of 100 years would see the Mentit grow, become more bold, until the Mogu could no longer stay on the defense. They would invade the Mentit lands and might have wiped them out, was it not for their first paragon rising up. This one was lucky enough to be there at the right time, at the right moments, using their amazing skills to turn the tide of battle. But they didn't want to leave the survival of the race to luck and chance. They wanted to be there in times of great need. So the first paragon of the Klaxi figured out how to preserve himself in Ember, preserved and able to be called upon in times of great need. Over time, more paragons would rise amongst the Mentits, each offering different skills, different abilities, earning the right and privilege of becoming these amazing fighters for their people, preserved within the Ember. Now, building a serpent's wall amidst Mentit attacks, that meant great loss of life, great loss of slaves, but the Mogu cared very little. The results of all their pain and suffering would see the rise of an empire whose buildings and monuments still stand to this day. It also drew the attention of other races, like the Zandalari trolls, who eagerly entered an allegiance with Lei Shen. His empire might have lasted much longer, was it not for Lei Shen traveling to Uldum and getting blown up by the Tolveer, who did not agree with his course of action. They thought the path of the Titans and the Keepers, it should not be drenched in the blood and misery of Azeroth's mortals. In order to stop the Thunder King, they reconfigured their Forge of Origination, the extremely powerful weapon targeted to end Lei Shen, which is actually the reason why Uldum is now so dry and sandy, as it was once a jungle area. Lei Shen's death did not immediately mean freedom for the people of Pandaria, but a revolution was brewing. The Pandaren were strictly forbidden from learning how to read or write, or even how to speak any language other than the Mogu tongue. Of course, they were also forbidden to even touch a weapon, let alone learn how to wield it, and so they secretly turned their own bodies into their weapons. Kang was the first, who after losing his wife and child to the cruelty of the Mogu, he realized that their extreme cruelty, it was not a sign of strength, it was a symptom of their weakness.
What is the source of your power? Think carefully before you answer. Many adventurers point to their weapons, or their equipment, or to tomes of arcane might. Long ago, when my people were slaves of the Mogu Empire, we were forbidden from carrying any weapon at all. We were not fighters, and no one believed we could fight the Mogu without magic and steel until Kang, the Fist of First Dawn, opened our eyes. One day, the beloved monk issued a challenge to his fellow slaves. "Hit me!" he called out. Surprised, the beleaguered Pandaren slaves tried to strike Kang, One by one they failed, for he intercepted their blows like a dancer and sidestepped their attacks like a reed in the wind. Our backs are hardened by the whips of the Mogul, he told them. Our arms are powerful from building their fortresses. Our minds are sharp from working alongside our enemy. You think the Mogul are stronger? I say we are their strength. The farmers, the bricklayers, the shepherds, the smiths, they all bowed before Kang. Teach us, they said. Teach us to fight. And when they rose as warriors. Your voice, your hands, these are the tools of true heroes. Use them well, and you can change the world.
They had grown dependent on their servants. Without them, the Mogul were nothing. Hiding his lessons in an artistic dance, his teachings were passed on until they relocated to Kunlai Summit, where they built themselves a monastery. Bit by bit, their ranks grew, until they had become strong enough to strike, defeat the Mogul at the Mogulshan Vaults, robbing them of their means for creating more twisted soldiers. Other races would soon join this Pandaran revolution. Kang had been right. As more servants stepped away, the Mogul Empire fell into chaos, until they were overthrown. A new empire rose up, for not just the Pandaren, but the other races that called the region home. One built on the principles of justice, wisdom, and benevolence. But peace rarely lasts within Warcraft, and it would again be Sargeras to cause a whole bunch of strife and suffering. The War of the Ancients, they call it, in which Azshara and her followers thought it was a really good idea to bring in the Dark Titan and purge the world. Emperor Xiaohao of Pandaria was granted a vision that trouble was brewing, and the peaceful reign that he was hoping for was not going to be his fate. Plagued with uncertainty, Xiaohao asked the August Celestials and his friend the Monkey King for help to make sense of his visions, as he would go on a journey to expel the dark emotions that troubled his heart. Doubt, despair, fear, anger, hatred, and violence. Pride was the only vice that he did not manage to overcome. But the others he poured into the lands infected by the old god Yogg-saron, giving birth to physical manifestations, the so-called Sha of doubt, despair, fear, anger, hatred, and violence. Each was defeated and locked away at the temples of the great August Celestials. Once free of his burdens, Xiaohao set out to spare Pandaria from the sundering he had seen. His spirit merged with the land itself, forced it to break away from the rest of Kalimdor. As the world sundered apart, his very essence shrouded Pandaria in a thick mist that would hide it and protect it. For the next 1,000 years, Pandaria would remain hidden as it faded into legends.
I conquered my doubts, my fears, my anger. I buried all of it within the land. But I held on to one vice, the one Sha I never conquered. Pride. My pride cloaked this land in mists. I thought we were better than the rest of the world. I thought we could solve our own problems, but for 10,000 years we stagnated. Our doubts and fears buried in the land, rising up to fester whenever we allowed them.
When the Sundering ripped apart the continents of Azeroth, we Pandaren thought that the rest of the world had been utterly destroyed. But as the centuries passed, one young explorer decided to see what was out there. His name was Liu Liang, and he set out to discover the world on the back of a turtle. We celebrate his bravery with statue and song, but if you were actually there, on the beach that very day, well, I'm sure he looked quite silly indeed. Oh, how the Pandaren laughed at him! But Liu Liang was more clever than anyone thought. Sea turtles always return to the beach where they were born, and so, despite the mists that envelop our land, he always had a way home. Every few years, he returned, with tales of mysterious cities in the sand, nomadic people living on endless grassy plains, a great empire under the ice, and a magical kingdom gilded in gold. Each time he returned, more and more Pandaren answered Liu Lang's call and joined him on his growing turtle. They were the bravest among us, the explorers, the adventurers. And that is the lesson of Liu Long, my friend. Everyone always laughs at the explorer. They always laugh until he returns.
Liu Lang, on top of his small turtle Shenzin Zhu, sailed through the cloaking mists. His small turtle grew bigger and bigger, housing all these wandering Pandaren, until they simply stayed on top of his back, the so-called Wandering Isle. That's why we would see Pandaren as early back as Warcraft 3, with Chen Stormstout hailing from the Wandering Isle. Ironically, while the Pandaren of the turtle would carry on Liu Lang's values for centuries to come, eventually they too lost a bit of their wanderlust as well. Content to just hang around on their turtle, but not Lily Stormstout though, Chen's niece. She was all about exploring the world like her uncle Chen had, and her moment would come when the mist parted due to the cataclysm rocking the world. The Alliance and Horde would also crash upon the Wandering Isle, pulling in the Pandaren to either faction. The legendary Pandaria was now revealed for all to see. New lands, new people, and new resources to conquer. But that's a tale for next time. So, thank you very much for watching, everyone. Subscribe if you like my videos. Leave a like if you enjoyed this one. And until next time. See ya!
So... it was a bear?
In a hat!